Hello, my name is Daniel and this is my Canyon Endurace CF-SL 8.0 2016. It's a road bike, a climbing bike, an endurance bike, but in this video I'm going to show you how I'm turning it into an ultra endurance race machine. Did I really call this an ultra endurance race machine? We'll roll with it. Right, I've saved you two things. Firstly, the pain of watching me try and stick all this stuff on a bike, and secondly, I've got changed. If that's not worth smashing the like and subscribe button, I don't know what is. Let's get stuck in. So before you all start yammering away in the comment section down below, telling me I've done this all wrong, let me just please explain to you what I am doing with this bike, what sort of riding. Now, I'm not doing any multi-day riding, so I don't need to take a sleeping bag, I'm not sleeping in a ditch, etc. One-day rides. Now, I'm going to be trying to be riding relatively fast. I'd say on a sporting course, I want to be moving at 16, 17, 18 miles an hour. So with that in mind, this is what I've come to, and I also want to be minimizing stops. It's not a race, but I want to be making progress. I think I've seen it referred to as touring with a sense of urgency. Anyway, let's get stuck into this bike spec. So firstly, wheels and tyres, they might look a little bit out of place on this bike, and I normally just run some shallow section aluminium training wheels because this is normally my training bike. However, 58mm deep Zip 404s set up clincher with some brand new Continental GP 5000s. I think that's a pretty good all-round setup. I'm a pretty heavy guy, so when it's windy I don't struggle too much holding the front end. I like how these wheels roll. They've both been rebuilt in the last couple of years, so I know they're pretty reliable. Clincher is easy to replace. In an ideal world, would I use tubeless? Maybe, but it just makes it easier. I know how to use it. Inner tubes are normal butyl inner tubes. Given the length of rides I'll be doing, I think I would lose some pressure if I was to use latex tubes, and again, it's just knowing what I'm using. And I think with really long rides, people slip into the habit of thinking, oh, it doesn't matter about speed because we're riding so far. Actually, it matters even more because you're riding for so long. So let's say, for example, these wheels make you 1% faster. Well, 1% over a 10-hour ride is a lot more time saved than 1% over a 2-hour ride. Moving on to the cockpit. Now, being a triathlete, I normally run these clip-on bars all the time. Keeps people in group rides on their toes. I know, gives us something to talk about. So I've not really changed the setup of these. However, they're actually a big advantage to this sort of thing. It's enabled me to hang a light on, so I've got somewhere else to hang things. It's a different position. I'm spending a lot of time on the tops, on the drops. It gives you another position to be able to relax and change the upper body demands. So I really like the front end setup. And touring with a sense of urgency, you're a lot more aerodynamic, like a lot more. The difference between me being on the hoods there and being on those extensions could be a couple of miles an hour. It's that big, so I'll definitely be utilising these where I can. Moving on to the drivetrain, actually getting the power to the ground. So I have a 5236 front crankset and an 1128 rear cassette. The bit I've changed is the rear cassette, mainly because I changed the wheels and this is what was on the wheels, but I don't need a big cassette. The courses that I'm going to be riding on aren't going to be really hilly, they'll be rolling at best. So I'd normally run an 1134 rear cassette, but actually 1128 means that the ratios are a lot closer together. So when you're really tired, you'll be able to get that exact cadence that you want. You're not going to be ever so slightly grinding or ever so slightly spinning too fast. There's a lot more chance that you're going to get that cadence that you want whilst maintaining the same speed. I've paired that with a brand new freshly waxed NRG waxed chain. There is a link in the description down below to those. I do have a nice discount code for if you want a waxed chain. Now the main reason for running waxed chains is firstly, they're more efficient, they're faster, but also they last longer than just normal lube on a chain, even if it's waxed lube, if not if it's normal lube. They also don't get dirty as quick, and this is something I've definitely found over the last few months. So with me doing these long rides, I'm going to want to not have to maintain it. I don't want to be stopping and lubing the chain, and having a wax chain on is a big benefit for that. If the weather's bad, I might have to lube a chain, but you'd have to lube any chain then, wouldn't you? So yeah, fresh wax chain as well. The other change I've made to the group set is I will have wired in this right shifter. On the end of this extension pole, I have a time trial shifter. I mainly have these fitted because it gives me a little bit more reach. I've got quite lanky arms. But actually, I leave the wires wired in, so I just pull that out, put it in the junction box, and I will change this right shifter to be on that extension. It makes me be in that position a bit more if I need to change the gear there. And I'll probably leave the left one on the road shifter because if I'm changing that one, I'm probably going up a hill and sitting up. Technology and lights. This is the area that gives me the most head scratching to do. Now, these rides or ride is going to be semi-supported. So whilst I want to carry everything I need, I'm not worried about charging things up. I'm going to have the facilities to be able to give stuff to somebody to go and charge things. But I'm trying to set out with the intention that I'm self-sufficient is the plan. So starting with lights, firstly, I'm going to be doing some riding in the dark. There's not very many long daylight hours at the minute in the UK. So I have on a Project 76 mount in between the aero bars, I have a Lesign 1600 XXL front light. This should be on the middle setting, which is good enough to see in my experience. Should last about 4 hours. If the temperature's pretty cold, I know batteries don't last as long, so I have another one on the handlebar as well, which will also last 3 to 4 hours. So between the two, I've got, even worst case scenario, I've got 6 to 7 hours of battery life, hopefully a little bit more. And on the rear, I have got a Garmin Varia 715. Now, when you turn the camera off on this and the radar off, it should last 10 hours in flashing mode, but it does take up quite a lot of space and it's quite heavy. I'm trying to not rely on any one piece of equipment too much. So having two lights on the back of this seat post, if one of them fails, I can either take it off and charge it, or take it off and swap it for another one, or just use the other one. So I've got a couple of backups there, and this one on the seat stay here is again just a backup. So my plan is to use one of these. These should last 5 to 6 hours on flashing mode. And if I'm going to be riding longer than that, I'll go on to the second one. And if that doesn't work for any reason, or if the batteries don't last as long as I think they will, I'll go on to the one on the seat stay. Hopefully, that will be enough for the rides that I'm doing. Now, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So technology to record the rides. I'm going to be using the Garmin Edge 1040 Solar. Now, even if, according to the manual, I have the backlight constantly on, I'm on the mapping screen, I'm using the highest GPS accuracy you can do, it should last 35 hours if there's no sunlight. So that should be absolutely fine for what I've got planned. But I will also be running my Garmin Epix watch to try and dual record, just in case for any reason I press the wrong button or the unit crashes or anything like that. It's been very reliable. The only errors I've had with it have been user errors, but those things can happen when you're tired. So I'm going to be running a watch just to have that going in the background as well, just in case the worst should happen and I, for whatever reason, don't save the ride. What the watch also enables me to do is live track through the watch through my phone, so that loved ones can follow along where I am if they're at all interested, and it doesn't deplete the battery in the Garmin unit. And if I have any issues with that, I can try and reset it a bit easier because it's through a separate device that it is the one that I'm using to route and to save the actual ride. I am planning on taking a battery pack with me, but this is purely for my mobile phone, just in case the cold gets to it and the battery doesn't last as long as I'd like it to. I'll have a battery pack in that storage bag, but I'll come to storage in a second. The only other technology is I'm going to be using my Fethero Asioma Giro pedals. The battery lasts for absolutely ages on them. It's nice to be able to look at power. It's not essential for the things I'm going to be doing, but it will be helpful to pace. Okay, moving on to storage, which is sort of like food and drink combined. I know it looks awful, I know, right. Frame bag, I'll start with the thing that's glaring you in the eye first. I have put loads of black tape on the frame because I quite like this paintwork, I don't want to scratch it, so underneath all the straps there is some low tack tape. Now, this is a pretty big frame bag. My plan is to take as much food as I possibly can. I'm a hungry boy at the best of times. This will give me ample space to take a battery pack and lots of food. This top tube bag, if I'm honest, I think I might just use that for things that are open. So let's say I have a bar and it's only half open, I'll then stick it in there. Or I might stick in there the break glass emergency jelly beans or whatever it is I'm using, or wrappers and stuff. I'm going to keep that empty when I start, just so I've got some options for where to put things. I'm hoping that should be enough. I'm not going to need to take any clothing with me. If the weather is bad, as I say, I do have some support. So whilst I'm trying to be self-supported, I don't need to be carrying any clothes or anything. So that is plenty big enough. I don't know if this is aero or not, to be honest, but I know that that's a lot better than perhaps carrying a roll bag on the front of the bike. So even if there is a small penalty, it's a small penalty. I need to carry the stuff, so that's what I need to do. Storage under the saddle is just the same bag that I use normally on training rides. It has 2 inner tubes in it, 2 CO2 canisters, a tie lever, a spare chain link, a multi-tool, some nitrile gloves, and I think that's about it. But enough to keep me going in there. In the support vehicle, I will have more spare inner tubes, spare wheels, patch kits, all those sorts of things. More complex tools if needed, but to be honest, if more complex things come up mechanically, then it'd be ride over for me. Something I'm not quite sure about is this bottle bag. This is a Podsax bottle bag. It's like an extra bottle bag. You can strap it on pretty much anywhere. I have sometimes used it on aero bars like that. That might be a good place actually. However, sometimes I've also used it on the bars like there. Now, I don't really know what to use this for. Obviously I do this sort of thing, don't I, during this sort of thing. And I think it might be quite a good little GoPro storage unit, but it seems a bit of a shame to put something so big on the front of the bike that's probably a decent aero penalty just for a GoPro when I'm hopefully going to have relatively free pockets because of all the storage I've got on the bike. So I'm not entirely sure about that. Fluids wise, it's going to be pretty cold over the next few weeks, so I'm not going to be drinking a huge amount. As I said, I have got some support, so I'm running smaller bottles, 500ml bottles, just so I've got some space below the frame bag, and I'll be able to get those replenished during the ride, so I don't need to carry like 3 or 4 litres of fluid. 1 litre of fluid is pretty okay. I think I'll be going through that maybe every couple of hours or so I can stop and swap bottles is the plan. So I feel like weight might be asked about with regard to this bike. Without everything on, this bike weighs 7 kilos, so it is a pretty light bike. However, I know that this will have added a lot of weight to it, and I'm actually not going to weigh it because I don't think it matters. The courses that I'm riding on are rolling at best, so I don't think the weight's going to be too much of an issue, and I don't want it to be playing on my mind. If it's getting really hard and I'm struggling to pedal my bike, I don't want to be thinking, oh, it's because this is so heavy. I will obviously be putting a lot of weight in food and fluid and other things, so it's just going to be one of those things, but as I say, the course isn't hilly enough for me to be worried about it. So yeah, there we go. Ultra endurance race bike. Is one day ultra endurance or one day at a time ultra endurance? I don't know. I'm going to call it ultra endurance though. 1 for a title, but 2 because it's probably quite a long bike ride still. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you use something different? Would you have done something different to this? If you've done a lot of long distance riding with a sense of urgency, please do give me any tips you would like, because I will very gratefully receive them. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I am planning to reveal what I'm doing when I've done it. I don't want to put any more pressure on myself in case it doesn't happen. Okay.